And we're back with another PaynePoints of Interest episode. I'm Sarah Harbuck, and with me is Michael Payne. Thanks for joining us today. We have a question from a Reddit user named Infinite Cantaloupe 5. Awesome name. Earlier in the week we talked about shipping policies and prices, and today the question is, what did you consider when putting together your returns policy? So any small businesses out there that do e-commerce or just commerce in general, it says the return policy is something really important, and I will admit I have not spent enough time on it for my business. I think it could be a really valuable way to assure my customers that they're getting a quality product and that they can return it if there are any issues. More than anything, I'm just curious if anyone has experienced people abusing this policy and what they've done to avoid it. So basically, they're just wanting feedback on how to set up a return policy. And I think if you are a type of business that sells a product, this is a very important thing to consider when you're setting up your business and how you're going to deal with that. I've never really worked a business where I sold a particular product. I sold a service. So it's a kind of a different animal. We'll have to talk about that on a different episode. But Mike, what would you say are like maybe the top 3 tenets of a return policy for any kind of commerce business?
The return policy is one of those things that adds value for your customers without
spending any money.
Really any money. I mean, you do in the long
Right.
run.
But
People take advantage of it, then you spend money.
It gives your customer some assurances that maybe if I'm not happy, I can bring it back.
Right. And there is certainly the question of whether or not a return policy can be abused. So the tenets for a return policy is providing value to the customer, ensuring business cash flow properly, and 3, the kind of what links them together is ensuring that your policy cannot be abused within reason. That's a really important part of that statement, is within reason.
Right. There's something that comes to mind immediately when I think of this, especially if you have a website and you're selling online. A lot of big merchants online have a, question, like a frequently asked questions section, or they have what their policies are. And I think if you very clearly define on your website somewhere, in multiple places actually, because people can be kind of dumb when it comes to finding that information, be very clear of what the policy is, what the time frame they can return it in, if they're going to get store credit or if they're going to get cash value back, all the things that you want to set up. And that's really not something we can tell you or really anybody else. You have to kind of define that for yourself and your business and how that's going to work best for you. However, having a very clear outline of what you're going to provide and what the time frame is and what you require your customer to do. I know with Target you have to bring back the receipt, and I think you have to show your driver's license, and you can only, you have to do it within a certain time frame, and if you don't have your receipt, you can only do that like twice a year where you bring something back,
Right.
So they have very very specific policies on their returns. If you own a small business and you're like a little mom and pop location, you got to factor in some things probably differently than a corporation. I think having a very clear outlined policy on your website and maybe even within your store, a sign, a little, info flyer somewhere that says, we do accept returns, but here are the, stipulations. What do you think there? I mean, is that a viable thing?
I think it's absolutely required to have the policy stated as clear as possible. And the other thing that a lot of small businesses don't necessarily want to think about is the fact that you should be revisiting your policy, especially in the beginning, every single month, if not more often. I'd say at least every month until you've got something, until you're confident that it's not being abused.
And every time you have an issue come up, it's time to think about it again and go, okay, so this thing that just happened with this customer, I need to factor that into maybe my general overall policy.
And the idea is not to try to keep that return from happening again, right? Obviously, you want to keep the returns from happening.
Yeah.
But if you're going to try to prevent returns, then you prevent returns in increasing the quality of the product by fixing the issue that the customer had as best as possible, and that's how you should evaluate it. You should only be making modifications to your return policy if you can in fact prove that it was an abuse.
Well, and two, if you have a consumable item and the item is consumed or half consumed, then what? You've got to think about that contingency as well. Like, hey, I go to this little boutique and I bought like a shirt or something and I wore it and it fell apart after one time. Will they take it back? How does that work? If I go and I buy something that I use and that part of it is gone, whatever that may be, and it causes, a problem or an issue of some kind, will they take that back? And as a business, you have to think, am I going to take a return that's been used? You have to, I think, figure out what's going to be acceptable for your consumer and for yourself, and what's, like you said earlier, provide the most value, but within reason. You're running a business, so you have to consider what's going to be best for your business, but also fulfill the needs of your customer and make them feel comfortable as well. Right.
And the other thing you do have to absolutely consider is the intangible portions of your return policy as well. If your return policy is too lax, it's not necessarily going to be abused, but if it is taking advantage of more often, the negative impact on the business from a financial side is that you could run into problems, especially if you use PayPal for processing payments. They don't look too well upon a lot of returns.
Yeah.
So a lot of people try to limit the number of returns just to avoid issues with PayPal or something like that, or whatever their merchant provider is.
Yeah.
That is something to consider, but don't get caught in the trap of artificially limiting returns when a customer has a bad experience. Because if you start doing that, then the negativity that you get in reviews or in word of mouth that you can't control is going to be a big problem for you.
Yeah. Making the experience for yourself and your customer. I think even if they weren't happy with the product, if you provide a good customer service on the back end of it all, then and resolve the issue to everyone's satisfaction, I feel like you're going to be okay. But yeah, clearly defining what your policy is ahead of time, so that way they know up front. And it's listed in black and white on your website, in your store, and you can always refer back to that whenever there's an issue. And be flexible, but also don't let yourself get railroaded.
Right.
So it's an interesting topic. It's definitely something that I'm sure a lot of commerce-based businesses have to deal with, and we'd love to hear your feedback and what your store or your business practices when it comes to return policies. So hit us up on our social media, Facebook and LinkedIn at PaynePoints, Instagram at points.payne, and Twitter at...
No, you got that backwards. Instagram is Payne.points.
Payne.points.
And Twitter...
and Twitter is PointsPayne.
Payne.
Oh, God. One of these days I'm going to get it. You can also email us at our website at PaynePoints.com. It's rough getting back into the groove of things here. Join us tomorrow. We'll be back with a whole other topic, and we'll see you then.